He walked into the glass showroom in muddy boots, torn jeans, and a jacket that had seen 20 winters, and the moment he stepped onto that polished marble floor, every head turned, every whisper started, and one man's laughter echoed loud enough for the whole room to hear. But nobody in that building had any idea that the dirt on his boots was about to become the most humbling lesson of their lives. Before we dive into this story, if you believe in the power of kindness, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. This channel, Kindness Miracles, is built on true stories that remind us how one small act of compassion, or one moment of cruelty, can change everything. Now, let's get into it. Marcus Webb had farmed the same stretch of land in rural Georgia for over 30 years. His hands were rough, cracked from decades of hauling feed, mending fences, and pulling calves into the world at 3 in the morning. He didn't dress up for anybody. He didn't need to. That morning, he'd driven 2 hours straight from his fields to a private jet dealership outside Atlanta, boots still caked in mud from checking on a sick horse before sunrise. He hadn't stopped to change. He hadn't thought he needed to. The dealership was the kind of place with marble floors so clean you could see your reflection, leather couches nobody sat on, and a gleaming white jet parked behind floor-to-ceiling glass like a trophy. The moment Marcus walked through the door, a salesman named Preston Hale spotted him from across the room. Preston had spent 15 years selling airplanes to men in $1,000 suits, and he knew, or thought he knew, exactly what kind of customer walked through his door. This wasn't one of them. "Can I help you find the bathroom?" Preston said, loud enough for the receptionist and 2 other salesmen to hear. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd heard worse than a joke in a nice suit. "I'm here about the Gulfstream," Marcus said quietly, nodding toward the jet in the hangar behind the glass. Preston's smile turned into something closer to a smirk. He pointed toward the plane, raised his voice so everyone nearby could enjoy the show, and said the words that would follow him for the rest of his career, "Buddy, you can't afford this. That jet costs more than your whole town." A few of the other staff chuckled. A woman near the coffee bar looked away, embarrassed for him. Nobody stepped in. Marcus stood there for a moment, steady as an old oak in a windstorm. He'd been underestimated his whole life, by bankers who doubted his loan applications, by buyers who tried to lowball his cattle, by strangers who saw muddy boots and made up their minds before he'd said a single word. He was used to it. But this time, he didn't walk away. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Calmly, without a hint of anger in his voice, he said, "Would you like to check my account before you keep talking?" He turned the screen around. Preston leaned in to laugh it off, until he actually saw the numbers. His face went pale. The account balance on that screen wasn't just enough to buy the jet in the showroom. It was enough to buy the dealership twice over. Marcus Webb wasn't just a farmer. Decades ago, his grandfather had signed oil rights to a small patch of land nobody wanted, land that turned out to sit on one of the richest untapped reserves in the state. Marcus had spent years quietly reinvesting that fortune into agriculture, veterans charities, and scholarships for kids from towns just like his, all while still waking up every morning to do the work with his own 2 hands, because that was who he was, jet or no jet. The room went silent. The other salesmen who'd laughed moments earlier suddenly found reasons to look at their shoes. Preston stammered out an apology, but Marcus raised a hand, calm and unbothered. "I'm not upset that you thought I couldn't afford it," Marcus said. "I'm upset that you decided what I deserved before you knew a thing about me. That's not a business problem, son. That's a heart problem." He turned to leave, footprints of dried mud trailing behind him across that spotless marble floor, a reminder that respect isn't something you hand out based on a person's shoes, their skin color, or the truck they drove in on. But here's the part of the story that matters most. Marcus didn't walk out for good. A young black employee near the counter, who'd stayed quiet during the whole exchange but had watched Marcus with something like recognition in his eyes, followed him to the parking lot. He apologized on behalf of the store, and instead of anger, Marcus offered him something else entirely, a job. Not selling jets. Running one of the scholarship programs Marcus funded back home, mentoring young men who'd grown up exactly like that employee had, wondering if the world would ever look at them and see more than what they were wearing. Preston Hale never forgot that day. He kept a framed photo of muddy footprints on his desk from then on, not as a joke, but as a reminder. He changed how he greeted every single person who walked through those doors after that, because he learned the hardest way possible that kindness costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost you everything. Marcus Webb didn't need anyone's approval. He didn't need the jet either. In the end, he bought a smaller one, quietly, from a different dealer who treated him with respect from the moment he walked in wearing those same muddy boots. The lesson here isn't about jets, or bank balances, or who has more money than who. It's about how we treat people before we know their story. The stranger in worn boots might be broke, or he might own the building you're standing in, but either way, he deserves your kindness first, not your judgment. Because in the end, the richest thing any of us can offer another human being isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity. So today, choose kindness first. You never know whose story you're standing in the middle of.